All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking real music in real time for real people just like you and just like me. So, the Hall of Fame voting is over, and Judas Priest gets the short end of the stick in the Hall of Fame voting. Really weird how a rock band can't beat something or someone, actually two people, really, that are ahead of them who aren't really rock, okay? I'm just going to say it because someone needs to. So Judas Priest takes the number 6 spot in the voting, and they were beaten by a number of different artists. Duran Duran finishes at number 1 with 934,880 votes, followed by Eminem, who got 684,237 votes. Pat Benatar, 631,299 votes. She deserves to get in. I'll say Duran Duran, they can get in there, but there are other bands I think that were more important than Duran Duran. But I get it. If you love the 80s, this list has 3 in the top 5 who are firmly ensconced in the 1980s. Eurythmics at 442,271, and Dolly Parton, who withdrew her nomination, said she really didn't want to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because she believes she's a country artist, and she is correct. Now, Eminem hasn't said, gee, I don't think I should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because I'm a rap artist. He finished in second place. Now, a couple of things here, right? Or actually more than a couple of things. So Judas Priest gets 365,999 votes, about 28,000 fewer votes than Dolly Parton. Okay. The 5 artists with the most votes will comprise a fan ballot that will be tallied with other ballots when the 2022 inductees are announced in May. So brace yourselves, because the inductees are about to be announced or will be announced in just a few days. To be eligible for nomination, an individual artist or band must have released its first commercial recording at least 25 years prior to the year of nomination. Notice how they don't say that the artists have to actually be rock and roll in their approach to music. Nominee ballots are sent to an international voting body of more than 1,000 artists, historians, and members of the music industry. Factors such as an artist's musical influence on others, the length and depth of their career, and the body of work, innovation, and lousy British accent, no, that's me, superiority in style and technique are taken into consideration. Isn't that nice? So technique and superiority in style. Okay, sure. So I guess what? Eminem is really stylish. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame of 22 will be a ceremony that takes place in the fall. Usually, I think it's in the spring. I'm not sure why they're delaying it so much. I guess, oh yeah, well, they put the names out there, and then you have to wait a few months for the actual induction ceremony. According to the Hall of Fame, the Judas Priest members that would get inducted would include current members Rob Halford, Ian Hill, Glenn Tipton, Scott Travis, along with former members KK Downing. That will be a fun reunion. Les Banks and late drummer Dave Holland. Judas Priest was previously on the ballot for induction in 2020, but failed to receive enough votes to make that year's class. Yes. So a couple of things to take note of here. Eminem and Dolly Parton do not belong on the list. They just don't. They don't belong. So Duran Duran does, Pat Benatar does, Eurythmics does. Judas Priest obviously would have finished in the top 5 if it weren't for the nominations of both Eminem and Dolly Parton. Eminem got twice the votes that Judas Priest got, almost twice the votes. That in a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, you know, a voting for Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, that's just incredibly stupid. All right. And I'm not saying that because, you know, I don't like certain musical styles. I just think that what we're doing with pop culture is we're infusing it in something that is honoring music from many years ago. In the case of Judas Priest, I think they started out in the early 1970s, maybe even 1969. I'm not 100% sure of what year they started, but I loved the 70s version of that band. And, you know, you can group them together with the likes of Deep Purple and Rainbow and Whitesnake and all of that, Black Sabbath, all that great music from that era that was hard rocking. You know, the 80s, they kind of morphed into something else, which again, I still liked for a little while. It got a bit cartoony at some point, and I wasn't as much taken with it. Again, it's not my regular music selection, but I do respect Judas Priest, and they do belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. There's no question about it. These guys are pioneers, and they've been around for a lot longer than Eminem. Okay, if you're just going to put Eminem in the same, you know, even playing field, you have to look at longevity. You have to look at influence, impact. It can't just be about impacting youth culture, as one person said about a Hall of Fame inductee. No, body of work, great music, pioneering style, great playing. I mean, you have to be a musician to be in Judas Priest or Duran Duran or Eurythmics or even Pat Benatar, right? Her and her husband, by the way, if she does win, I'm hoping her husband goes in with her. I haven't heard one way or another, sorry to quote Blondie there, but I haven't heard if Pat Benatar's band is going in with her and which members of her band would go in, or if it's just Pat. It would be really weird if she went in all alone without her husband, but we shall see if she even gets in. So again, the headline reads, Judas Priest fails to make the top 5 in the 2022 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction fan vote. If they don't get in, that could spell real trouble for Judas Priest as far as future nominations, because I've noticed that if you don't build your votes up, in other words, if you're not getting more and more votes as time goes on, you know, you were nominated in 2020, how many votes did you get then versus how many votes did you get now? Again, I'm wondering if this whole thing is rigged and they're using the same machines that were used in the last election. I'm not sure. There's a good chance that they are. But needless to say, you know, hey, everything was above board the last time around, so there's nothing to worry about, right? This is 100% above board, and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame honoring pop culture here. The people who are voting are trying to vote for pop culture or for more recent popular stuff rather than voting for a very deserving rock band, a legendary heavy metal band. And even if it's not your cup of tea, you know, I would take Eminem off of this list. I would take Dolly Parton off of this list. So I'm an equal opportunity omitter. And that leaves plenty of room for Judas Priest to be in the top 5 for vote getters. Those votes too, the ones that were cast for people who probably don't belong in this nominating process. I'm sure some of those votes would go to other people, or those votes wouldn't come in at all, and there would be a better distribution between the real rock artists that deserve to get into the Hall of Fame. But because I'm not one of those snooty people that the Hall of Fame chooses each year to select their nominees for induction, because I'm not one of those people, and you're probably not one of those people, that makes it really difficult to actually get real rock bands into the Hall of Fame. Even, like I said, this list, which includes Duran Duran, I think they're a good band. And they finished at #1, so they're almost a shoo-in. The problem is there are better bands than Duran Duran with better catalogs, more extensive catalogs than they had, who deserve to get in before they do. Possibly the same thing for Eurythmics. I would say the Eurythmics, very influential, but they really didn't have the catalog. They were a short-lived band. And so it's interesting. Bands that have been around forever have this great catalog, or they, had this catalog back in the 70s or whatever. The Guess Who comes to mind, right? Have they ever been nominated for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? I mean, they're all getting really old, and it's really sad that these bands aren't going to get in. And if they do get in, everybody's going to be gone. So that's when we change the Hall of Fame and we reform it and we make it a populist institution rather than a snobby elitist institution. Sounds a bit like our government, doesn't it? Same people running the show. That's all I got. See you soon, everybody.